You know, I talk about cheap chunks of plastic a lot, usually as a derogatory way of referring to a badly built piece of consumer electronics. Like, for example, remember these old Dura brand TVs? These little 13-inch pieces of junk that Walmart used to sell before LCDs took over everything? Yeah, I remember those things. Here's one on eBay used. What's the bid on it right now? Starting bid $20. These things were $60 when they were brand new. What about VCRs? Oh man, did those ever become cheap chunks of plastic towards the end of their heyday? I remember my dad bought a Funai VCR in the late 80s when I was a little kid, and he used that very VCR until the late 90s. Then when he was going to look for a replacement for it, everybody in the stores was telling him, yeah man, you're probably not going to get more than a year out of them because a VCR is a cheap chunk of plastic these days. Here's another site I'm very familiar with. I remember back in high school, in the electronics shop, we had something similar to this going on, except we were a tad more organized. We'd always have a pile of broken VCRs up against the wall on one of the corners of the shop, because, yeah, VCRs were total crap back at the end of their heyday. This thing, however, despite very much looking like a cheap chunk of plastic, isn't a cheap chunk of plastic. This is my Casio WK1250 keyboard that I got for Christmas way the heck back in 1998. So do the math. Knock off a year, because we're just getting into 2012. 2011 minus 1998. This keyboard is 13 years old. It's a teenager. So far, it's not mouthing off at me or eating me out of house and home without gaining a pound. Or nah, just kidding. But this keyboard, despite being built very similarly to other cheap keyboards at the time, has just kept on going and going and going. I had a very ad hoc setup when I had this my junior and senior year in high school. Then it went off to college with me. I took it back and forth to campus in its little jetpack. There was one time when I tried squeezing it into a dorm room closet, because we had big walk-in closets with curtains and stuff, and I didn't have a lot of clothes that hung up. You know, most of my clothes could be folded and put in a dresser or something like that. So what I would do is stuff this thing into the closet in the dorm room, and it would actually just about fit in there. There's a little bit of paint scratches on the right side. Let me go see if I can spot them from where this thing, oh yeah, it's just a, well, you can't really see because it's too dark, but there's a focus, you piece of junk. There's some paint scratches around the other side from it being a rather tight squeeze. So all that time, and the thing still works. Let's just fire it up here. Biggest problem I'm running into with it these days, and look at that, you can't really see it very well, but even the screen hasn't started really started to fade or anything. They said that the backlight on this blue screen would start fading after a couple of years. And I knew somebody with a WK1200 who had that happen, but this thing, knock on wood, it still hasn't all these years later. Biggest problem I'm having with it nowadays is not the keys. The keys are awesome, but some of the dust that regularly gets on this thing when I don't clean it enough is getting into the buttons and the connectors. So I imagine within a year or two I'm gonna have to pop the top and go in and clean off some contacts, because this thing's pretty much been running problem free for years and years and years. Let's play something. Let's go free session, and then, oh yeah, even the speakers are still in decent shape. Bass reflex speakers, so the speakers in this thing are kind of like what was in boom boxes back in its day. Now, the only thing I've actually had break on this was I was a little careless with the power plug, and the Casio AC adapter no longer works, so I had to have Radio Shack rig up one of their own jacks so I can just use a generic Radio Shack adapter with it, which is good because I can go buy a generic power adapter for it now if the voltage and current is the same, as well as the polarity, and not have to buy the proprietary Casio one if they even still make it. So, yeah. Still works all these years later. The built-in sounds aren't all that bad. I mean, I've been walking through some stores and whatnot, and I've been listening to, you know, like Target and whatnot, and 160 is the drums. Turn that off. And the built-in sounds in the keyboards these days aren't that much better than what was in this thing back in the late 90s. So the big thing that I do with this thing nowadays, though, is hook it up to a computer like the AV station over here. It's got the special sound card with the front panel from the Sound Blaster X-Fi before they started making X-Fis into very gamer-oriented sound cards. They had one that was kind of a jack of trades that professional musicians and AV nuts could use, and it includes little MIDI ins and outs. So I can run this into the computer and then download some really huge sound fonts to make the instruments sound even better from MIDI. So fun stuff. So, you know, built-in sound is kind of cool, but but if it goes into a computer, it sounds even better. Almost makes me not want to ever get a newer keyboard, because the built-in sounds really don't matter. All I got to do is just run it into a computer with a MIDI interface and pop on some headphones, like these trusty Sennheisers right here, and this keyboard sounds awesome. Yeah, that keyboard's come a long way since Christmas '98 when I got it. It's been a fun hobby over the years. I've played that keyboard in various places, and I've recorded some things with it from time to time, and that's what I'm going to end this vlog with. 2 songs, one of them that was made with the built-in sounds on the keyboard, and the other that was made with some really big sound fonts that I had with the keyboard hooked up via the MIDI DIN connectors. They're both instrumentals and rather silly to be playing on a keyboard because they're both rock songs, but I hope they at least illustrate the difference between what the built-in sounds can sound like and what the keyboard with sound fonts can sound like. I'll throw in some Winamp visualizations for these songs to go along with them too, so you're not staring at a blank screen. So sit back, relax, and enjoy, and until next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.